The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.
Hello, this is Morgan Halgren. For 16 seasons, Living in Iowa told the tale of what it means to be uniquely Iowan. Tonight, we honor that spirit by bringing you another glimpse into our rich heritage with a few stories from our archives. In this episode of The Best of Living in Iowa, we'll remember those who served in World War II with a look at Iowans who flew with the famed Tuskegee Airmen. Reminisce with former members of the Women's Army Corps, and relive the Battle of Iwo Jima through the eyes of the Barnett brothers. Tonight we want you to meet some unsung heroes of World War II, men who overcame not only the expected obstacles of war, but also the indignities of prejudice. They are the Tuskegee Airmen, and their stories inspire respect, gratitude, and the question, what helped these airmen rise above the racism?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
It's been more than 60 years since our nation entered into World War II, and it would seem that that's long enough for the tales of sacrifice and courage to have been told, and the heroes and heroines honored. But there is one group of World War II fighters that has been forgotten until recently.
That these folks strike a note of pride in our hearts.
This group of men, called the Tuskegee Airmen because they trained together in Tuskegee, Alabama, were some of our nation's finest pilots. Like all African Americans in the military at the time, they were segregated, and their contributions to the war effort were rarely reported in the mainstream press. Nevertheless, they were known in African American circles as the best of the best.
You know, you have a number of people that believe that blacks didn't serve in combat and had nothing to do with it. Well, like I said, Iowa had 12 black Tuskegee Airmen. 6 of them served in combat. And of those 6 flyers that served in combat, they had over 400 combat missions between 6 men.
Not only did they fly an incredible number of missions, they also worked as a team to protect bombers flown by white pilots. And they had a perfect record.
We have that one feat: we never lost a bomber under our escort to enemy fighters. We were in demand after the bomber crews found out how successful we were. And if you notice, I believe that the aircraft out here has a name on it, by request. That was because the bomber units started to ask for our escort.
Despite their obvious talents and military rank, these officers were told to sit in the back of the train, go to the end of the line, and use second-hand equipment, all because they were African Americans. But they ignored the daily indignities and excelled at their jobs. They were highly motivated.
We not only fought for our country, for our race, for our families. We represented the 14 million black Americans that were fighting for first-class citizenship.
It is important for all kids, black and white and otherwise, to know about the extent to which all people participated in the military. Sometimes some against greater odds than others, and that this is the kind of thing that I think makes this country great, that we all have a stake in it.
Iowans are starting to take note of the airmen. In 1997, a group of students from Central Alternative High School in Dubuque made it their class project to learn about the airmen and wrote a book about them. Living in Iowa told the story of how the students raised more than $10,000 to help restore a rare P-51C, one of the planes flown by the Tuskegee Airmen. That plane, one of only two 51Cs still flying, is managed by the Red Tail Project in southern Minnesota. It has wowed historically minded crowds across the nation, including events in Dubuque and in Des Moines.
Oh, you can't imagine it. I mean, it's highly emotional. I mean, because staying out here watching that 51, it was just like being back down in Tuskegee.
You feel like you're king of the world in that plane, and do things that others don't do, and so we always look forward to that. It's a good airplane.
These gentlemen made it possible for me to succeed, and I think that's just an important piece for me.
You know what this is?
The plane brought generations together, like this airman and his grandson who got to sit inside the P-51 cockpit.
Those are probably all of the original dials and stuff.
The dedication of this P-51 memorial, I think, is something long, long overdue, but the day is here.
On November 9th of 2002, 6 of the airmen and several widows of airmen attended a dedication ceremony held in Des Moines for a permanent memorial to Iowa's Tuskegee Airmen. This full-size fiberglass replica of a P-51D will sit at the entrance to the Iowa Air National Guard 132nd Fighter Wing on the north side of the Des Moines International Airport. The memorial airplane was delivered, assembled, and painted by volunteers from the Iowa Air National Guard. The dedication ceremony and the plane were paid for by a conglomeration of businesses and social groups under the leadership of Robert V. Morris, CEO of the Fort Des Moines Memorial Park.
People ask me, well, why did you guys do it? I said, we did it because they deserved it. You know, and if we don't do it, who's going to do it if we don't do it?
Long after the words spoken here have been forgotten and the memories of the ceremonies have faded, these 2 aircraft, one flying high and one proudly displayed, will serve an important function. To remind us all that a dozen men from Iowa heroically stepped up to serve their nation and to show that they had the right stuff to make that nation proud.
For the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Career women are gradually breaking through the corporate glass ceiling. Limitations to women's ambitions in every area are slowly falling away. So it's easy to forget that for several generations, women who ventured into a man's world had to face the battles with public opinion on every front. The women of Chapter 98 marched happily into that fray.
Raise your right hand. You're in the Army now.
I was the first girl from Turkey Valley High School to go into the military, and I remember it was announced at my graduation, and the gymnasium went silent. And I thought, oh my.
It was something to do different, big adventure. I was Mary Jean Carroll when I went in, but the first day there they told me that they didn't have time for formalities, that I would be Mary from then on.
I joined because there just wasn't anybody left back home. Everybody was old fogies, you know. My dad said, no girl ever goes into service. But after he saw me all in my uniform and everything, he was all right.
Like many good friends, the women of Chapter 98 meet once a month for coffee, cookies, and conversation. But instead of chatting about grandchildren, husbands, or vacation destinations, many of their discussions revolve around war.
And the WACs drove all of the Jeeps. We really felt like we did a service, though.
Here's parade.
Iowa's first Chapter 98 is the only Women's Army Corps Veterans Association in the state. and includes female veterans from World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam.
We would play the waves and the civilians, and it got a little rough, and one of our girls turned around and smacked the other gal, and we practically had a riot.
The meeting of Chapter 98 was come to the order.
While the members come from 14 different cities across Iowa, all share memories of Army pantyhose they insist could have pulled a truck, 100% polyester uniforms, and parents who weren't quite sure they wanted their little girls running off to join the Army.
A lot of them say, oh, they were just whacks. They didn't do anything. But as far as I'm concerned, we did a lot of good things. Memories are something they can never take away from us.
It's just been so nice for me to find this group, this chapter, because it's just like coming home. No one understands what you're talking about unless you're a whack. It's like, you know, being at Yellowstone and looking at the lake. Unless you've been there and you've experienced it, it's hard to tell somebody how beautiful it is and what an experience it is.
With liberty and justice for all.
If you spend an afternoon with Chapter 98, you'll find these veterans have a knack for detail and a never-ending enthusiasm for storytelling.
I might have dated the one a couple times.
And if you listen closely, you'll get the feeling that they tell these tales not just for themselves, but also for the many unrecognized women who came before them. Their stories speak for the woman who took the place of her wounded husband in the Revolutionary War, for the nurses who cared for the soldiers of the Constitutional Army, and for the many women who not only served the war efforts, but battled the mindset of the time.
Take the women into the armed forces, who then will do the cooking, the washing, the mending, the humble, homey tasks to which woman has always devoted herself.
Think of the humiliation. What has become of the manhood of America?
Despite such protest, in May of 1942, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed a bill creating the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps. 1 year later, in a move towards greater equality, the Auxiliary Corps was abolished and replaced by the Women's Army Corps.
And I remember getting there, and it was just so beautiful. The grounds were beautiful, the grass was just immaculate, and the next day I found out why. Because we were all given scissors, and we all got to trim grass with the scissors.
Like the men, the WACs learned the ropes of boot camp and KP duty and perfected the fine art of Army bed making. It seemed the only difference between the sexes was that women were restricted from combat. But, as newspapers across the country pointed out, the contrast didn't stop at the battlefront.
No, they didn't have a real good name when they first went in. They all thought you were in there to entertain the officers or something, I think, but we soon straightened them out.
Beyond the headlines, life as a WAC meant much more than posing for publicity photos and competing in Army beauty contests.
And the truck would come around and pick up the ones that had died overnight and the ones that also that they didn't think would live through the day.
The U.S. boys brought back with skinny rail legs and fat stomachs, and you know they were mistreated. It was very, very hard to see that.
There was one patient I had, he was so full of shrapnel that I had to bathe him with us cotton swabs and oil.
We've really blazed a trail. We weren't really wanted, but we proved that we could do a job and that we were not trying to push the men out, but we only wanted to assist and make it a better place. And I hope we've done that. At least we've tried.
The Women's Army Corps was dissolved in 1978 when women were incorporated into regular units. But the WAC history echoes on through the women of Chapter 98, who still enjoy swapping stories over coffee and cookies.
I guess it's like a rose that's closed up. You bloom. I don't like to be stretched too hard, but the military stretched me and made me grow.
And like any good storytellers, their tales not only salute the past, but also serve as lessons for the future.
I am a firm believer that what you learn in your life is for a reason, and that you can put even the lessons you've learned when you're 18 years old and out marching in a field, because you're going to be able to use it to help somebody else. Tolerance and dignity and honor, and it's just made me who I am. I'm not anybody special, but I'm a better person for having been in the military.
In remembrance of those who have fallen in service to our country, we've chosen stories that honor that ultimate sacrifice. Beginning with the compelling story of the Barnett brothers, who, 60 years after fighting in the Battle of Iwo Jima, returned to the tiny island with their own loyal brigade of family and friends.
The thing I remember most about being on Iwo Jima is the sense of excitement I had, coupled with a sense of reverence. I had become aware of Iwo Jima and the role my grandfather played on it in 7th grade.
Bob Barnett was 24 years old, nearly the same age his grandson Matt is today, when he fought in one of the bloodiest battles of World War II. More than 6,800 Americans, most in their teens or early 20s, lost their lives on Iwo Jima.
What gets me the most is all my buddies. They're still there. As far as I'm concerned, I know we brought them back, but to me, that's one of the reasons why I go back, to walk over the grounds with them. That's what makes me feel in honor of them.
On March 12, 2005, Bob returned to the tiny Pacific island for the 60th anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima. His brother Doug was by his side, as he had been 60 years ago, when as young Marines they struggled through the ankle-deep sand under heavy enemy fire. Walking the now peaceful beaches, the Barnett brothers were accompanied by 3 generations of family members, along with special friends.
We're taking those flags back, and we're going to have our grandsons help raise them. And that's very important to us, that type of a thing, because we're not going to be here a lot longer, and we want to pass anything on we can to our grandchildren so that they'll remember us.
Bob and Doug grew up in a coal camp in Knoxville, Iowa, surrounded by 7 brothers and a sister. Balancing hard work with good fun, the Barnett children were taught to play old-time country music by their mother. From those strong roots, the Barnett children grew to value family. In 1942, Bob and Doug enlisted together in the Marines. Doug, just 19 years of age, had to persuade his father to let him sign up. Drawn by a sense of duty to defend country, brothers Merle and Jerry and their brother-in-law Scott also joined the war effort in various branches of the military.
Dad says, 5 boys is too many. No war. That many in one family. Half of the family was in the service.
Before leaving for Iwo Jima, Doug organized a special surprise ceremony in honor of his brothers at Mount Soledad Veterans Memorial in San Diego, California.
To know that these 4 brothers will be forever etched in stone, it's quite an honor.
Now a resident of San Diego, Doug was drawn to California after spending time training there during the war. After completing boot camp, the brothers departed from San Diego in 1943 for their first close-up look at war in the Pacific.
Our first time overseas, we went to Guadalcanal, we went up northern Solomons to Bella La Bella, Choiseul, and Bougainville. So we came back here and formed the 5th Division in California.
While the 5th Division was forming, Bob got married, but a few months later, bound for Iwo Jima, left his young bride behind. 660 miles south of Tokyo, this small island held great tactical importance. Desired as an air base for U.S. planes within easy striking distance of Japan, Iwo Jima was the empire's last line of homeland defense. On February 19, 1945, Bob and Doug were among the first U.S. Marines to land.
We went in on the Higgins boat. It's wide open to the top. It's like a big convertible. Here you're all in there waiting for the ramp to come down so you can go in. Well, there was Mount Suribachi looking right at us. We wasn't very far off either. There it was. And pretty soon, I heard ricochets off the side of our Higgins boat, and some of the Marines right beside us were dropping. They were dead.
Despite more than 2 months of bombing raids meant to weaken Japanese defenses, landing troops braved heavy fire. The coarse volcanic sand provided no traction, and open beaches no protection. Taking cover and directing fire from an extensive network of caves and tunnels, the Japanese defense was deadly.
We spent 36 days and nights there of constant battle, constant, day and night. I had 1,000 bullets go by my ear. I could hear them go by, but I never had one that had my name on it.
We had so many dead Marines, we used them for sandbags. That's something we never trained for either. Then we went up to take this airfield. We was right up on the edge of it, and that was the 5th day. And finally we got up there, and we turned around, and people started hollering, and they was raising the flag on Mount Suribachi. And everybody thought, well, this is over. This is it. Boy, we got them raid now. Well, we was there for 31 more days after that, still fighting.
Bob and Doug fought side by side for most of those 36 days, but were separated once while under heavy enemy fire.
We jumped in a hole over here real quick. And then once we jumped in the hole, we thought we'd be all right, but no. Then the Japs knew that we were there, so they started dropping knee mortars in on us. So we figured we got to get out of there. So I said, we're going to have to head for the beach. So when I count 3, let's go. 1, 2, 3. So I made it all the way to the beach, but my brother did not make it to the beach. I did not know where he was at, or whether he got it or not.
He took off, and I stayed in his shell hole, and I laid in there for 2 days and nights. I even could hear the Japanese. I could hear them talking, and I played dead. There. Finally, things settled down, and I headed for the beach. Took me a couple of days to get down there. And guess what he said to me? Where in a blankety blank have you been? I need some help down here. That's what he told me. We laughed, and that's where it was.
You had to take things serious, but you couldn't take things too serious, or you'd never make it.
We was all scared. We was so scared that we didn't think about it no more. I mean, you just did what you had to do. Hope you can see the sunrise again. That's the way it was for 36 days and nights.
Of the nearly 75,000 U.S. troops that landed on Iwo Jima, 26,000 were killed or wounded. 1 out of every 3 Americans never made it home. The Japanese also lost great numbers. Most of the nearly 22,000 Japanese defenders did not survive.
After Iwo, though, we came back to Hawaii and regrouped again, and we were 2 days out of Pearl Harbor heading for Sasebo, Japan, because we were going to hit Japan proper. But they had dropped the bombs, the atomic bombs, and the war ended, thank God, because they estimated it to be 1.5 million of us guys never made it out of Japan, and I believe that.
And when we was on the high seas, they announced that the war was over. The captain of this ship told us, the war is over, and we're going to have a good excitement tonight. Well, we thought maybe we were going to get steak or something to eat. Big excitement going on, you know. And he says, no, he says, we're going to turn the lights on all the ships, and you could see them at night, which we hadn't done in the last 4 years. So, and they wrote a song during the wartime, when the lights come on again all over the world. There was a song made that way, and that's what we got to sing. When the lights come on again, we was real happy.
When the lights go on again all over the world, and the boys are home again all over the world.
Then we got a bus from Des Moines to Knoxville, and we got out, and there was an old fella there, recognized us. And I said, we want to go home. And he was a taxi driver. He had a little taxi. And he took us. And we wanted to pay him. He says, no pay. Then their mom and dad come running out of the house. And like Doug, Dad grabbed him, Mom says, well, bobolink, you're back. You know? We was glad to be home. Oh, yeah.
After experiencing the horrors of war, the Barnett brothers embraced the freedom they had helped protect. Doug moved to San Diego while Bob stayed in Iowa. Both raised families of their own and achieved their share of success. In 1970, Bob, along with his wife and son, returned to Iwo Jima for the battle's 25th anniversary. Doug, not yet ready to return to the deadly battle site, chose not to attend. On the island for the first time without his brother, Bob attended a ceremony that included some of the Japanese prisoners the Barnetts had helped capture.
If you talk to any of the Marines or Navy or any of the fellows on either side, they don't want to kill one another. We really didn't. They were human beings just like we was. But that's the way it was. And we either did it or we got either killed or be killed. That's the way it was. Until 25 years later, here they was. And here we were.
Returning for the 60th anniversary, Doug and Bob, now both in their 80s, have seen much of death and much of life. With the wisdom of age and a lifetime of experience has come the need to share their contributions and sacrifices with the next generation.
Matt says, Grandpa, what do you want, Matt? He says, I want to raise this flag. Well, I says, what's that one for? He says, that's the one you give to me my wedding. I want to raise it. We did, every night. And she says, I said, Matt, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to frame it. I'm going to put it in my living room. And I said, I'll never forget it.
I would like people to remember the sacrifice and what guys like my grandfather went through to give us what we have today, to give us the freedom we enjoy.
The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.